Hello students, welcome back for this course on object-oriented programming in Java, lecture number 5. In the last class, we have discussed regarding how to take the input from the user and how to execute the program using Eclipse IDE. In this class, we are going to start with your last topic from this unit, that is regarding the array. So as we all are familiar with the term array, and you also have used this array term while writing the program using C, right? So, whenever I'm talking about array with respect to the C language, then we have defined the array as that is a collection of homogeneous data, or in other words, it's a collection of similar type of a data. That is, whenever we want to club the several data of similar types, then we use the array. And what is the basic use of array, or why we use the array? Because if you do not have the concept of array, in that case, to store the multiple data of, let's say, similar type or dissimilar types, we may be required the different variables in order to save that particular data, and that will become a bit no complex thing, or that will become some no time cumbersome, or user or the programmer may get confused. Oh, in order to remember all those variable names whenever the user or programmer wants to use those variable name in the program. So, to just reduce the number of variables, or to just, as we do not want to have the number of variables to store the number of data, we use the array. So what the array actually does, the array actually allows us to store the multiple data of similar type, and all that data of similar type will be identified, will be having a common name, and that is nothing but the array name. So as a programmer, or as a user, we do not need to remember the multiple variable name, which could be the case when we are do not have the, or we do not use the array, right? Because let's say if I want to store the if I want to have the 100 numbers, so in order to store the 100 numbers, but obviously I'll be requiring 100 different variables to store those 100 different numbers. Whereas if I use the array, I will define the size of the array as 100, and I can store those 100 numbers into the single array name onto the different location. So in this class, we are going to see that how exactly we are going to use the array in Java, and and how it is going to differ with respect to the C. That there are some syntax and semantic differentiation, that when you're talking about array in Java or array in C. So that is what we are going to see. So as I defined that in case of computer programming, whenever we want to collect data of similar types, then we use the array, right? For example, if you want to store the names of 100 people, then rather than creating the 100 different variables to store those name, or to store the name of 100 people, will be simply creating a one array, and will be assigning the size of 100, and those 100 names will be stored in the same array or with the same variable name. Whereas in case of Java, we do not declare the array as the same way as we declared in C. Because in C, you must have seen that we declare the array like a data type, then array name, and then we are having a square bracket, and inside the square bracket, we do put the maximum size or the limit of the array, right? Whereas in case of Java, the syntax is bit changed, right? That whenever I want to create the array, so very first I need to specify the type of array, that is the type of data the array is going to store. Let's say if I'm talking about this particular example, so I define the array of type string, right? What I did, there is slight change in the syntax. In case of C, it was like string array, and this square bracket was after array. Whereas in case of Java, we are having a data type, then we are having the square bracket, and then we are having the array name. Whereas we do not specify the size while declaring the array, right? In order to specify the size, in order to assign the size to the array, we'll be requiring the new keyword, because new keyword is the one which is going to allocate the memory to this particular array. So there I write the new string 100. So to specify the size of the array, which is of type string, whereas the name of the array is array. So it will be more clear as we progress, as we see few more examples. So that is not a problem. Then if I'm talking about this particular representation, then the number of values in the Java array is fixed. That is what equals to this size. That is 100. And unlike C, in case of C, the index was starting with the 0 and it ends with n minus 1. So same is the case with the Java as well. That array index is always starts with the 0 and it's always terminate with n minus 1. So this is how we are going to declare the array in Java. That whenever we want to declare the array in the Java, so we are having the declaration as a data type, right? Then your square bracket in order to define that it is an array, and then your array name. And again this array name is the choice or as the flexibility or the freedom of the user, that whichever array name user wants to choose. And when I'm talking about the data type, so the data type is quite similar to the C, as we have seen the primitive data types in Java and C. That is nothing but int, short, character, double, string. These all are the data types for which we can create the array. And then array name, it's an identifier, as I told you, that it is a choice of the user. For example, I can create the array like, let's say, integer. So this will specify that this array is of type integer and which is having the name as data. So this array is having the name as data and which is of type integer. But again the question which might arise, that how we are going to declare the size, or from this particular declaration how we come to know that how many elements that particular array can store, because we are using the array as we want to store the multiple data of similar types. And if you can observe that in this particular declaration, nowhere I specify the size of the array, right? So you are quite wonder that how many elements this particular array can store, right? So in order to specify the size of the array, we have to make use of the new keyword, and then we need to specify the size of the array. That how we can do it? We can do it like this. Let's say if I declare the array of type double, right, double array, which is having the name as a data, that is the name of the array is a data. If I want to specify the size to this particular array, then I will be taking the name of the array, data, new, that is in order to allocate the memory, in order to allocate the size to this array, then of type double, and the maximum size is 10. So now this particular representation is indicating that the array can store the 10 elements. We can also say that the size or length of the array is 10, unlike the C programming, right, in which in the square bracket we put some number and that number was indicating the size of the array. So same is the case in Java as well, but the only thing is that in order to allocate the size, in order to allocate the memory to the array, we'll be requiring the new keyword, right? Whereas you can club these two statements together and you can write down the combined statement, that is creating the array and as well as allocating or defining the size of the array. That is, I can club like this, that is a double array, the name of the array is a data, is equals to the size of array, that is equals to 10. So the moment I write the new, this will going to allocate the memory to the 10 elements of this particular array. So this clear? The next is that how we are going to initialize the array. Initialize means what? Whenever I want to initialize certain values, whenever I want to assign certain values to the array, then how we are going to do that? In case of C, it was quite easy, that we are writing the data type, then the array name, then the size, and equals to we are assigning the values to the, or we are initializing the values to the array. Whereas in case of Java, as we told you that, as we are discussed, that we are having the data type, then we are having the array size, or we are having the array symbol, and then we are having the array name, and then we can assign or we can initialize certain values to this particular array, right? So what this particular statement is indicating, that we are having the array which is having the name as age, which is of type integer and which is having some initialized values equals to 4, then 4, 12, 5, 2, 5 like that. So if I ask you that what is the size of this particular array, so if you just count the element, so but obviously you can say that the size of this particular array of array age is equals to 5. Whereas in case of Java, we are having one standard function in order to calculate the size of the array, and that is the length, right? Means if I want to calculate the length of this particular array, so I will simply take the array name dot length function, right? Means if I write age dot length, it will give me the length of this particular array. So that is the standard function which is available in Java, which will give us the length of the particular array. Whereas in the Java array, each memory location is associated with the number, as we know that whenever we are declaring the array, so array indexing starts with the 0, and likewise it goes up to n minus 1. The number is known as the array index, and we can also initialize the array in Java using the index number. And as I told you that, let's say this 12, 4, 5, 2, 5 will be stored in the respective memory location, like index 0 will be having a 12, will be having a 12, at index 1 will be having a 4, likewise. Now at each index will be having a new value. So the array index indices always starts from 0, that is the first element of an array is at index 0. If the size of array is n, then the last element is but obvious n minus 1, because we are starting from 0, so the last element will be n minus 1. Then how we can access the particular element of the array, right? We can access the element of the array by means of the index. As we discussed that each element in array is going to store at certain index, and index will always starts from the 0. So if I want to print the value for the particular, or if I want to print the particular element, then I should print the value of that particular location only, right? If suppose I'm talking about this particular example in which I have declared one class, and inside the main function, let's say now I have created one object, right? And that object is of type integer array. So integer age equals to 12, 4, 5, 2, 5, means this age is having the 5 elements, whereas this 12 will be at 0th location, 4 will be at first index, likewise this last 5 will be n minus 1 index, that is 4. So system.out.println, if I want to print this 12, that is the first element, as it is the first element, so its location will be 0, so I'll be simply writing age of 0, so it will give me the output as 12. Likewise, if I write age of 1, it will give me the next element, and if I write the age of 4, it will give me the last element. So likewise, we can now execute or we can print the elements in the array. We are going to see the practical demonstration of this, so don't worry, it will be more clear when we write the program using this. Then this is what a static program which I written, that every time I need to specify this age of 0, age of 1, age of 2, age of 3 and age of 4, right? Whereas the same thing can be achieved by means of the loop, that I can iterate the things using the loop and I can simply print age of I. So again I'm just keeping the same example. Now instead of 5 elements, I'm specifying or I'm initializing the 3 values to this array age, and now rather than specifying age of 0, age of 1, age of 2, I'm simply putting one loop, right? Whereas as I told you that in order to get the length of the array, we are having the array name dot length function. So that is what I used here, that my array is starting from 0, that is my loop is starting from 0, and it will goes up to less than the length of the array, that is the length of the array is 3. So this will be equals to I is less than 3, then I plus plus, that is your for loop syntax, and then simply I am printing SOP, that is age of I. So initially the I will be equals to 0, so age of 0, it will print the 12, then it will increment, it will become age of 1, it will print 4, then again it will increment, it will print 5. So likewise we can print all the values of array by means of the looping statement as well. Then the very important one is the different types of array. And again this thing you have learned in case of C programming. There are 3 different types of array which we are having in case of C programming, namely one-dimensional array, two-dimensional array, and we are having the multi-dimensional array. And we also know the application of this as well. that one dimensional, whenever we want to print the multiple elements in a single dimension, that is either column wise or the row wise, we go with the single dimensional array. Whenever we want to perform the operation, let's say onto the table or onto the matrix, we require the two dimensional array, that is the row and column. Whereas whenever you want to perform the operation like on the trees or let's say matrix multiplication, in that case we require the multi-dimensional array which is having the size more than 2. So very first one dimensional array, whenever we are talking about one dimensional array, so the one dimensional array we are indicating like this, that is, let's say array is of type integer and which is having the size as 5. So if I want to print the values or if I want to calculate the sum of this array, so we can write down the program like this: int array, I'm initializing the value equals to 1 2 3 4 5. I'm just initializing sum equals to 0 and I'm just printing I equals to 0, then I is less than equals to array dot length, that is the number of element which this array is having, then I plus plus, and simply I'm writing sum plus equals to array of I, or in other words you can write down sum is equals to sum plus array of I. Whereas this array of I will be having array of 0th location, array of first location, second location, like fourth element. If the value is array of 0, it will fetch 1. If value is array of 1, it will fetch 2. Likewise, if it is array of 4, it will fetch 5. And likewise, it will just know sum of the values with the sum, and finally we'll be getting the addition of all these numbers into a sum variable. Right? So we'll see this practically. The next we are having, that is a two-dimensional array. This is mostly we are using in order to perform the matrix operation, that is addition, subtraction, right? So whenever we want to perform such operation, we use the two-dimensional array. Whereas in case of two dimension, we'll be having two different dimensions of the array, and again this array is having the name as array, which is of type integer, and it is having the two dimension. Whereas I'm specifying the size of this array, that is the first dimension is of size maximum size of 2 and the second dimension is maximum size 5. So with this we can understand that this is a two-dimensional array and which is having some size that is 2 and 5. So in this the array has 2 rows and 5 columns, the indices starts from 0 0 and it will ends up to the 1 4. As we know that the two values, the row is 0, it will start from 0 0 0 1 0 2 0 3 0 4 and it will ends up to 1 comma 4. In order to execute this particular logic, we are going to write the program like, let's say I have specified this two-dimensional array, that is int array, the rows and columns, whereas I initialize the values as 1 2 3 comma 4 5 6, that is the first array and the second dimension. Then in order to get the values of this two dimension, I'll be requiring the two for loops, right? Because this for loop will work for this first dimension and this second for loop will work for the second dimension. So if I execute this particular code, so the first value which this array will get, that is ij, when I is equals to 0, j is equals to 0, so 0 0. And whenever we are having a nesting of for loops, whenever we are writing one for loop inside the another for loop, that is what we termed as the nesting of for loops. And whenever we are having a nesting of for loops, that nesting of for loops execute in a way like, for each value of outer loop, your inner loop is get executed completely. Means in this case, my outer loop is int I is equals to 0 and my inner loop is int j is equals to 0. What I said, if for each value of outer loop, your inner loop is get executed completely. So when I is equals to 0, this j will execute completely. Means j is equals to 0, j is equals to 1, j is equals to 2. So what will be getting over here? That is 0 0, 0 1, 0 2, 0 3. Right? Once this condition is false, it will go to the upper loop and again it will increment the value of I. Now I will be equals to 1. Now again when I equals to 1, this j will executed completely. Means now j will be equals to 0, j will be equals to 1, j will be equals to 2. So the values which will be getting over here, that is 1 of 0, 1 of 1, 1 of 2. Right? Again this will become 2 and likewise the execution will goes on. Right? So this is nothing but the two-dimensional array. Then the next and the last type which you are having, with respect to the array, that is the multi-dimensional array. So whenever we want to perform the operation, like let's say the array matrix multiplication or the transpose of the matrix, in that case we require this multi-dimensional array. Or whenever we want to perform the operation on data structures like tree, there also we require this multi-dimensional array. So as the name itself indicates, the multi-dimensional array means the one which is having more than two dimension. Because if it is having a two dimension, it will be termed as a 2D. If it is having one dimension, it will be termed as a 1D. But whenever your array is having a more than two dimension, then it will be termed as an multi-dimensional array. In this case, what I did, I had defined the first dimension, I defined the second dimension, I defined the third dimension, right? So this is nothing but the example of multi-dimensional array. So we are going to see this example for the matrix operation. So at that time this thing will be more clear. And how the elements are get stored, if I'm talking about this particular syntax, that is int of first square bracket, second square bracket, which will indicate that this is nothing but the two-dimensional array which is having the name as A, and I've assigned the size of two dimension, that is the first dimension is of 3 and second dimension is of 4, right? Whereas if I talk about its practical execution or how the values is going to store, so but obviously first the value of I will be 0, so it will be 0 0 0 1 0 2 0 3. Then the next the value of I will be 1, then the j will be executed completely, then I is equals to 2, j will be executed completely, and likewise the values will be get stored at the respective location. Then how we can initialize the 2D array, that we have discussed in the last example. Like in this case I have declared the two-dimensional array like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 4 5 6 9 and 7. So this 1 will be stored at 0 0 location, this 2 will be stored at 0 1 location, this 3 will be stored at 0 2 location, likewise 4 5 6 9 will be stored at this particular location, and 7 will be stored at 2 0 location, right? In order to get the length of all these array, that is the first array, second array and third array, right, we'll be using the function that is length function. So if I just initialize this array like this, and if I use the SOP, length of first array is a of 0 dot length, so it will give me the output as 3. For a of 1 dot length, it will give me the output as 4, and likewise for a2 dot length, it will give me the output as 1. And again, if I want to print the elements of the 2D array using loops, so we have to use the make use of two loops, right? That is a of length and a of I length, and accordingly for each outer loop, inner loop will get executed completely, and we'll be getting these values as an output. So we'll see that how exactly we are going to get this particular output, and we also see that how the execution will takes place. And this is what the last program which we have seen when we are talked about the example of how to take the input from the user, right? And then now the same program we can execute by means of the array. Let's say if I want to create the 5 different objects for the same program, so how we are going to use the array in order to execute that particular program, so that we are going to see, right? So that is what regarding the different types of array in Java. So in the next class we are going to see some practical demonstration or the practical execution for this array, and then we'll conclude this unit number 3. So thank you. See you in the next class with the practical demonstration.